This episode of Bullet Heaven was made with a copy of the game provided by LaPointe Joints. When it comes to playing shoot-'em-ups all the time, it's always good to break away from the norm every now and again, and no place is easier to do this than on Steam. Myriad indie shooters see release all the time, so let's take a look at yet another such title on Steam, this time from Canadian developer Neil LaPointe. GunPig Firepower for Hire is a twin-stick shooting game developed and published under the LaPointe Joints banner for Windows PC. Currently available via Steam and itch.io, a future port is also planned for Nintendo Switch. GunPig doesn't take itself especially seriously, so what makes it tick? Let's take a closer look. GunPig's controls are as you'd expect from a twin-stick style shooting game, though multiple control methods can be used. We played this game with an Xbox One controller, but a WASD mouse setup is also supported. Players control Bax, an alien pest control specialist and possibly shortest merc in the galaxy, around the screen with the left analog stick, while aiming independently of movement with the right one. Movement is very twitchy and fast. There is no true analog control, resulting in an all-or-nothing speed beyond the slight dead zone on the left stick. The player can also move by way of the D-pad with exactly the same results, though this tends to feel a bit unnatural. Players can sometimes uncover purple energy masses which will cause the player to slow down, which, if we're honest, can actually be helpful in some situations. But more on this later. Pulling the left or right triggers will fire the player's current weapon, which can be switched out at various points in any stage. The player will start out with the default CHRY-001 machine gun, represented by, well, cherries in the top left-hand corner of the screen. A number of other weapons can also be found and equipped by moving on top of them, and more are accessible the further players make it into the game. Some are definitely more powerful than others, but will also have different fire rates, range, and speed. Apples, oranges, carrots, coconuts, pistachios, eggplants, there's definitely a weapon here for everyone. And each is useful in its own way, though we felt most comfortable with rapid fire varieties and the eggplant's constant but short-range laser style. For an extra boost in power, players can pick up red energy masses that last for a short amount of time. If more than one is collected, it can even be stacked for extra damage. Players also have access to secondary fire that accompanies the weapons they have in use at any given time. There are 3 different alternate fire types: an explosive landmine that will detonate when an enemy draws near, a green area of effect weapon that damages any foes that are drawn over it, and a screen-clearing bomber that makes quick work of smaller enemies and damages everything else, including bonus crates and obstacles. Secondary fire is dependent on the orange gauge found in the top left-hand corner of the screen. Some alternate fire types require more energy than others, but it will fill up over time to be used again. Players can also uncover and collect orange energy globs that will rapidly charge the alternate fire gauge for a short time. There is no life stock in GunPig, but players do have a shield gauge that will allow the player to sustain several hits before Bax's ship is finally destroyed. This shield gauge can be refilled by collecting defeated enemy cores or by picking up special blue energy masses that rapidly repair Bax's ship for a short time. If the shield gauge reaches 0 though, it's game over, with the option to either continue or abandon the run. Unlike a lot of other twin-stick shooting games, GunPig plays over the course of only 8 stages. In a lot of ways, it's set up like a more traditional shooter with only a short game session and 1 CC in mind. Compared to games like, say, Bang.io with its 44 stages, or Assault Android Cactus's 25, with both connected with an overarching stage select hub and per stage score, GunPig's length is very short by comparison. Each stage has a main target that needs to be eliminated, and the player can take as little or as much time as they like to do so. This can open up GunPig for alternate completion challenges such as speedrunning, a rather uncommon goal within shmups in general. Of course, even if the boss unit is defeated, the stage will not progress until its core is collected. But there's also an element of exploration as well. Each stage has a hidden chamber that contains a collectible card which can be viewed on Bax's fridge at the title screen. With all of this in mind, GunPig's structure and gameplay elements work, but it's also definitely not perfect. One issue we found is that we did not manage to trigger any achievements throughout our playtime, despite satisfying conditions for at least 60% of them. This is probably an easy enough fix for a future patch though. The challenge isn't especially here either. While later stages definitely ramp up the hazard, enemy, and shot density, they are far from truly difficult. The player speed is actually their greatest adversary in these areas. Still, despite the lack of real white-knuckle action, this is still a great game for newcomers. Veterans might not stick with it for long though. We also would have liked a couple of added control tweaks, namely the ability to purposefully slow Bax's movement, particularly with maybe an additional input. Granted, true analog control would also address this instantly. Finally, we felt that the bosses in most of these stages, especially the first few areas, were less grand than we expected. Some of these foes just look like slightly larger versions of the generic enemies that players encounter all the time, and there's no alert or warning saying that players are encountering the boss at all. This led to times where we unexpectedly finished a stage without even realizing it. Generally speaking, GunPig is a decently fun little diversion that more or less achieves what it sets out to do: offer the player a fast, to-the-point, streamlined twin-stick experience that doesn't take itself too seriously. It definitely has potential for achievements, once they're fixed of course, as well as exploration, survival, speed, and of course, score. In GunPig, the player's goal when it comes to the score is to amass a fortune in unspendable cash, naturally taking out as many enemies and destructibles as possible while collecting as many bonus items as they can before exiting the stage will get the player's score up in no time. This is a very straightforward game with respect to its score system, with nothing in the way of fancy chains or in-depth mechanics, so anyone can get a decent enough score if enough time and patience is put into maximizing each stage's payouts. Just defeat enemies, collect their cores, find and snap up bonus items, and profit. However, there's also a time-based cash bonus that steadily counts down in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen as players make their way through any given stage. The faster they complete the stage they're in, the better this bonus will be. At stage end, players get a small breakdown of their final earnings for the stage. The achieved score for the area they are in has the timed bonus applied for the player's total. The player's last achieved score from their previous run, as well as their best, will be displayed at the title screen as well. Steam leaderboards are also supported. Bax has been tasked with clearing out the Scholastic Space Station's stalwart academy of rogue robotic space monsters. Not much more needs to be said, really. It's time to get paid, son. GunPig was developed in Unity and as such employs a fully polygonal graphics presentation. On our rig, it trucked along and recorded at a solid 60 frames per second using a Core i5-9400 with up to 4.2 GHz in boost, a GeForce GTX 1650, and 32 GB of RAM. We wouldn't call GunPig especially graphics intensive, and its recommended specs require only 8 GB of RAM and a GTX 1060 or AMD equivalent. The design in GunPig is adequate, the art style is fairly unique, and the areas players will explore are decently realized, but we will say that the enemies feel just a bit too generic. They still work, but they all feel very samey and lack personality. On the sound front, there isn't a lot here that offends, though two things stuck out to us. Sometimes the bomber's secondary fire is a bit too loud, and destroying some obstacles can lead to a cacophony of shrill, loud, shattering noises. We would also have liked if Bax made sarcastic or humorous remarks throughout the game as well. A portrait in the top right-hand corner of the screen gives players an idea of Bax's mood, but some banter would have been great. The soundtrack is definitely a great fit throughout the whole game though. Generally speaking, the layout and design of the game's main menu and UI is clean and well designed. A great tutorial panel can also be accessed at the title screen that gives players a decent explanation of what to expect in the game with regards to control and objectives. So, how does GunPig Firepower for Hire stack up? Let's take a look. The twin-stick controls are generally very simple, but the twitchy fast movement and lack of true analog control in GunPig can make things a bit dicey. GunPig isn't especially hard, but that's okay. It makes for a chill, relaxed shooter that's excellent for newcomers to twin-stick shooters. At only 8 stages, GunPig is on the short side. Exploration and collectibles extend the replay value. The general art direction and basic design is very good here. We just wish there was more personality to the enemies and stage targets. The soundtrack and most of the effects in GunPig work very well for their applied use. We would have loved some sarcastic banter from Bax though. GunPig does some neat things with its exploration, weapon systems, and variable progression, but it also doesn't reinvent the wheel. And again, that's okay. As a twin sticker with a more traditional style stage set and more traditional scoring objective, it works. GunPig is a mere $5 US, giving it a decently good value in the end. GunPig was a refreshing little diversion from the heavy-hitting classic shooters we've been checking out lately, and we have to say that palate cleanse was very much needed. Though it's far from exceptional, GunPig is still worthwhile for a simple change of pace, and it can definitely be a fun one to boot. In the end, GunPig Firepower for Hire gets a 3.75 out of 5. You can get a copy of GunPig Firepower for Hire on Steam or itch.io today for about $5 US. It's time to knuckle down and bust out the Dreamcast for yet another new shooter. Xenocrisis is coming up on the next episode of Bullet Heaven. See you all in the next episode.